If you've got a comment, call Will now on 0818 300 103.
0818 300 103.
Or text us 083 3010 103. The Midlands Today Show with Will Faulkner.
Midlands 103.
Okay, let's cue the music. Let's cue the bride. Cue the heads turning, cue the smiling faces. Oh, the joy of the big day. Well, for Heidi Withers, there'll be at least one scowling face staring at her as she glides up the aisle, because she has given the entire world, the whole planet, an insight into the relationship with her mother-in-law-to-be, Carolyn Byrne, by passing on an email she received from the 60-year-old flower arranger, which featured, well, more than a few car crash statements. Some of the complaints include not declaring what you will and will not eat while a guest at somebody's house, not tucking into your food before everybody else starts, not lying in bed if the rest of the household rises early, and never, ever insult the family you are about to join, especially not in public. And don't get married in a castle unless you own one. And here's where it gets really sneery, I think, as if it hasn't been sneery enough already. I understand your parents are not able to contribute very much towards the cost of the wedding. There's nothing wrong with that, except that convention is such that one might presume they would have saved over the years for their daughters' marriages. Ouch. And if this is the case, it would be most ladylike and gracious to lower your sights and have a modest wedding as befits your income. Like I said earlier, this is a real situation where you get the popcorn ready, you sit back and just enjoy how that wedding unfolds. But to what extent does Miss Byrne have a point? And are all mothers-in-law a little bit snidey or a little bit protective or a bit too nosy? Well, we've certainly heard about lovely mums-in-law, but I'd like to hear your experience. First of all, we have Dr. Paul Ryan, an assistant lecturer in sociology at NUI Maynooth. Paul Ryan, you're very welcome to the programme.
Hi, Will. How are you?
Don't suppose you care to discuss your own mother-in-law, do you?
I might fit her in there somewhere.
Is she nice?
She is nice. I mean, I was reading this, and there's an issue that Carolyn Byrne, the mother-in-law, brings up about staying in bed late, and I was reprimanded by my mother-in-law for doing that, I have to say.
In a civil way?
She said, "We've already had breakfast."
Well, see, I'm lucky because my mother-in-law-to-be gets up quite late. So I can lie in to my heart's content. It's good. What about the tone in general and the type of complaints? Is it not a little dated and snobby?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, she really is giving the mothers-in-law a bad name here. It is quite dated. I mean, I think what's happening here is that since, I'd say, the 1960s, we have this kind of process of informalization. And that just basically means that, you know, the gaps between young and old, between the different classes, between, you know, issues around clothing, they've all become more relaxed. So, like, social conventions have gotten relaxed. And they've gotten relaxed because they fit into our modern family life. So, for example, you know, in terms of like families sitting around for dinner at a table, I mean, that's actually rare now for some families. Never mind who starts first. Never mind being asking your host, can you have a second portion? You know, all of this, it's kind of, it's not reflective, I suppose, of how busy our lives are.
Yeah, no, people tend to splinter away, and some people might eat in the sitting room in front of the telly, and others would be in the kitchen, but maybe at different times. And as you say, that's just the new reality.
Yeah, it is. It is a reality. And now, if you're trying to impress your mother-in-law, maybe there might be a great expectation, as she suggests, to kind of fall in with what they're doing, the old when in Rome.
You have to be able to read the situation, though, because if you were to do that in some households, you'd be branded a snob.
Yeah. And this is the thing. I mean, I think some of her her issues here are probably are quite reasonable. I mean, insulting the family publicly in a pub, the family you're going to marry into. I mean, I think for most of us that would be unacceptable.
Yeah.
Saying, dictating, I'll eat this, I won't eat that. Again, you're visiting somebody. We probably wouldn't do that either. But I think the real issue here is that it's not really about the behaviour. It's all about class. I mean, the question is, if this mother-in-law, if her son brought back, Pippa Middleton or something like that, I mean, the question is, would she be concerned if she got out of bed at 11 a.m. in her PJs?
Probably not.
I doubt it.
I think there is a hint to how this woman is driven by class, or at least by money, in the last paragraph when she refers to the cost of the wedding, noting that this girl's parents don't have a lot of money. So does that give away her real distaste for the class issue?
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It's less about the behaviour, I think. It's less about the behaviour and more about the social class, more about this woman's position, which she really has the issue with. Unfortunately for this mother-in-law, I think this is going to come back to haunt her, because certainly when there's children on the scene, I think it's daughter-in-laws that really kind of dictate access between those children and their grandparents on the dad's side. I think there's often a kind of a natural connection on the woman's side, but often men can be kind of remiss in fostering that relationship. So I think this woman could find in the future, if there's children on the scene, that they may be a little bit frozen out from that. So she might be, she may change her tune.
But equally, and it depends on your circumstances, there could be a vested interest in keeping the mum-in-law or the dad-in-law sweet if you want babysitters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that is the relationship now between grandparents and daughter-in-laws. I mean, it's much more complex. I think, as you're saying, in terms of their role, in terms of childcare, grandparents do around 10% of childcare. I mean, they're representing a saving of thousands and thousands for particularly newly married couples. So there is a vested interest on that side that the daughter-in-law keeps the grandparents on side for that very reason.
I'm just picturing, Paul, the scene whenever the two of them walk down the aisle, Freddie and Heidi, and Carolyn is there. And she has to be there. And I assume the wedding is going to proceed despite all the publicity this has received. What a frosty atmosphere. Can you imagine anything more tense or more difficult or more uncomfortable to be at?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. But once that wedding is over, maybe there'll be kind of a line in the sand, and I think they'll probably kind of move on. In terms of this, with the mother-in-law, Carolyn Byrne, she's probably could be quite happy with how she's come out of this. Upholding standards. She's coming out with probably, she might think, quite well.
Well, I guarantee you, somewhere this morning there is a TV producer stroking their chin, coming up with an idea, and the light bulb is going off over their head, and they picture reality TV. Imagine featuring Carolyn and Heidi and Freddie, following them with cameras. That would be class television. Yeah. Or classless, as the case may be.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think Carolyn, she's definitely on again, it's kind of a previous generation. I don't think it's certainly kind of changed. I was thinking myself on this, and I was thinking that, in terms of, like, for example, between classes and between groups, like when I go, for example, to the doctor, I just go in and say, how are you, Jerry? How are you doing? Kind of first name things. And when I think about my mother and her generation, she was yes doctor, no doctor. She was that sort of differential, and that really it's a generational thing in terms of how we deal with people, how relaxed we are with people. I think that's what goes to the heart of it.
Yes, but I think we have to pick our battles around terms like that, because you will always get chastised if you aren't seen to show proper reverence to certain people, whether it's doctors, whether it's priests, whether it's whatever the older generation perceives as needing that respect. So yes, you just have to weather the storms when they come. Paul Ryan, thank you very much for taking our call this morning. Or should I say Dr. Paul Ryan?
No, Paul Ryan's fine.
God bless Paul. Thanks for taking our call. Now, Avril joins us from Edenderry. Morning, Avril.
Morning, hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. You have the mum-in-law from heaven.
I think I have the opposite to everybody else you're speaking of this morning, but I suppose it's the oldest contention in the book, people and their mothers-in-law. But I am very lucky to have a beautiful mother-in-law.
And what is so wonderful about her?
Well, I suppose she has a natural, easy disposition that doesn't ruffle feathers, or she's a very intelligent woman, as in she picks her words carefully, and she would praise rather than criticise, and she knows when to step back or whatever, you know. She's never forced her views on us, and yet she's always there. She's just a wonderful person, and
so there's a bit of a diplomat in her then.
Total diplomat, I suppose. Yeah, but it's a naturalness. It's not forced in any way. And if she's going to criticise or say something that you mightn't like to hear, she almost apologises before she says it.
Well, that's very welcome, and I imagine it puts you at ease. But
Absolutely.
when you were meeting her for the first time, were you still a little bit nervous? Was there some trepidation there?
Yes, I suppose I was, but then people's reputations tend to go before them, and I would have known what I was dealing with from listening to other people, which is huge, you know. But yes, it's always an ordeal, I suppose, meeting people, and especially in that scenario, because I think I knew that I'd found my Mr. Right fairly quickly, and this was a biggie.
Did you make a big effort to impress her then?
No, I didn't. No, I was just myself as well, and I think that's what you need to be. I don't think you need to put on all this airs and graces, because the truth always comes through in the end. You know, you can't gloss over things. It always rises. So no, I was just myself, and she was the same, and it was instant click, like with her son. So the apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Good. So I presume you count yourself lucky, Avril, though.
I do, and I'm lucky. I work with her. We work together in Highfield Golf Club just outside Edenderry, and we're together a lot of the time, and then we both play golf as well, and I play with her. She's a friend, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. She's great, but...
well, what's her name then, since she is so wonderful?
Her name is Phil Duggan, and she's a wonderful woman. She's in her early 70s, and she's an inspiration to everybody, and anyone who knows her locally would say similar, I would imagine. She's a real lady in every way.
Well, she's a top mother-in-law, so take a bow.
She's a top one. There you are.
Avril, thanks for the call.
Not at all, my pleasure.
Thanks indeed. 0818 300 103 is our telephone number. Now we have Anne in Banagher. Morning, Anne.
Good morning, Will.
Well, you are a mother-in-law, so are you getting a bad reputation here today?
No, I don't think so, no. Some people are, yes, some people are. Yeah, but I mean, it's like every other relationship, I suppose. It differs and it varies.
So how many daughters-in-law have you?
I have no daughter-in-law, yes. I just have one son-in-law.
Oh, all son-in-laws?
Yes.
So would you be just the one, is it?
Just the one, yes.
And what's he like?
It's good. Well, you know, we have a healthy relationship. We agree to differ on things.
We agree to differ. Covers so many sins, doesn't it?
And but we have a great relationship, and I can call on him any time I need a bit of help or to do anything like that. There's no problem, and he can call on me to babysit, which is no problem in getting me to do.
What did you make of him when you first met him, man?
I thought he was nice. But I suppose we all have a sense of pride in our own children, and I suppose maybe a fear for their welfare in the future and that type of thing. And I suppose some people get carried away, and I suppose wondering are they good enough and all this kind of thing, and they forget that in most cases you're not living with the person.
Yeah, but you didn't come armed with a checklist. You didn't say, right, you sit down there. Now, I want to ask you about your dad. What does your dad do? What does your mum do? What pedigree do you come from? What's your dog's name? You know, you didn't give him the Spanish Inquisition.
Oh, God, no, I didn't. Not at all. No, because I would have met him early on in the relationship, I suppose, and at that stage you don't know whether it's going to continue or not, you know. So no, I didn't. Not really, no, because as I said, he's not going to be living with me anyway, and he is very good, fantastic around the house, great to the children, and I would say I'd be very happy.
How long are they married?
They are nearly 5 years.
Very good. And do you have other sons or daughters?
I have a son and a daughter, but none of them are married.
But they aren't afraid of bringing somebody home to mum, are they?
Oh, no, they're not. No, not a bit, no.
Good.
No, I always, even when they were youngsters, I let them bring their friends in to play and visit and everything like that. Even as children or even as teenagers and all that, it's better to meet who they're hanging around with and you know where they are and who they're with and that type of thing. I think it's better. I suppose it's not good having them afraid to bring people in.
My mum-in-law to be is lovely, but
Yes.
when Alex was telling me about her, you see, Alex comes from Armagh, and
Yes.
she would come from a red, white and blue part of Armagh, shall we say. And I was told that I was going to be greeted with Union Jacks and all sorts of banners and all sorts of paraphernalia to basically scare the hell out of me. So I was prepped for a really, really rough experience, and it never came. It was great.
Never came. You're
Sometimes
still
people
waiting.
give their mums or their dads or whatever a bad rep to their partners, and it's not necessary at all.
It's not necessary, it's not, no. I think everybody, I mean, I suppose there are extreme cases like that email that lady got now in England. I think, that was absolutely terrible, and it is giving mother-in-laws a terrible name. And I suppose mother-in-law is always a joke anyway. But in most cases, they're absolutely wonderful. They're absolutely wonderful, and I suppose it's up to the mother-in-law and the son-in-law, daughter-in-law, I suppose, to build up a healthy relationship. And this person is part of your family, and you should accept them as that.
Well, that's true. But
Yeah.
you wouldn't believe how many texts and how many calls we have received which begin with, "Don't mention my name, but," and they go into a rant about the stuff that their mum-in-law or their dad-in-law gets up to. But anyway.
But I suppose it's up to us to accept the person for what they are. They're somebody else's child. Accept them for what they are and see the good points rather than trying to change them.
Nosiness seems to be the biggest complaint, and not understanding boundaries. In other words, maybe coming into the house without knocking on the door first or announcing yourself. That seems to be a big gripe among a lot of people.
It does. I suppose invasion of privacy. I suppose that can happen. Yes, that can happen. Well, my daughter and son-in-law live up the town, and so sometimes I would ring to see if the kids were going to bed or if they were going out to do something before I would go up. But there'd be times I would arrive unannounced as well, and it doesn't seem to be a problem.
Good. Well, long may it continue. And thank
Hopefully.
you very much for the call.
Not at all, Will. Thank you very much.
Take care. God bless. 0818 300 103 is our telephone number. Now, we have had an email which shows the other side of this. And it is sad. This really, it moved me, and I felt very sorry for the person sending it who doesn't want their name mentioned. And we will oblige that. Well, your item today, poking fun at mothers-in-law, is all very well, but please remember there is another side to the story as well. Not all mothers-in-law are interfering old biddies. I am in a situation which is breaking my heart. My son has a girlfriend who will not allow him to have any contact with his mother. I have always been friendly and welcoming. I go on the theory that if she makes him happy, that will do me. I don't interfere, but I am always available to help if I am asked. If my opinion is requested, I give it. I would not visit without clearing it first. In other words, I have tried to keep all the rules, but it made no difference. This girl wants his family out of his life. Now, I know he is no better when he allows that to happen. He is old enough to deal with the matter, but he is very quiet and not good at standing up for himself. Therefore, I am the mother who is ignored, not contacted, passed on the road with barely a glance. And young people need to look at their own children and consider how they would feel if this situation arises for them in a few years' time. Although I have never leaned on my son or asked him for anything, he is all I have, and my heart is broken by this girl's behaviour. So think again before poking fun at mothers-in-law. It's not as funny as it seems, and in a few years, young people will be mothers and fathers-in-law too.